Hello, world. This is me. I graduated college recently from an undergraduate program, and I gotta say, work felt pretty similar at first. Just going to it let me sleep in about an hour more, and I didn't have to pull all nighters either. It was pretty sweet, but I moved pretty far, so I didn't really visit my old university often.
Then came next year graduation, and I paid another visit to the university. It definitely brought back a lot of great memories. And fun aside, they actually ended up updating all the classrooms and made them so modern literally the year after I left. Anyway, let's just move on. Now, when I went back after so long, I wanted to visit everyone again. I ran into a bunch of people since they were also there for graduation again. So I was catching up, and no matter who it was, whether it was advisors, friends, or just some kind strangers, a similar conversation would happen at some point. It would usually start off with, "Oh, you got a CS job?" And I'd say yes, and then they would end up asking me how I learned the languages for it. Well, let me tell you, because I didn't expect to get this question so much. It was fair though, since I used more languages at work than we normally studied in the classroom. After all, how does someone learn and use so many languages? College courses generally use Java, although I've also taken some with C and some assembly. And some people even said it must be easy for a software engineer to learn. And I'm sure they're right. But I actually didn't study software engineering, or even computer science. I actually took biomedical engineering. Shocking, I know. Oh, but I did take a few computer science classes on the side. So then the question has to be asked, how did I learn so many languages? If I didn't even take the same number or difficulty of courses, then how come I was able to keep up and do well at work? It kinda all comes down to a couple of basics that apply to any language. You need to identify these and then work on those first when learning a new language. If it's similar to what you already know, then it'll make your job that much easier. A couple of these are function and variable types, syntax, and organization. There's a lot more that can be said here, and plenty of advanced and fine tuning topics, but let's just focus on these for now. The first of these topics are functions and variable types. Although most languages have more or less the same functionality, they may write it very differently. Let's look at Java over here. And this is the main function, or the first thing that's run. Note how there's a lot going on, like public, static, void, and main, and these string args and square brackets. Each of these are keywords and have meaning, and appear when you first create a project. Let's compare this to C++. And that's it. There's no public or static, or anything in the parentheses, but these two are equivalent. They both represent the first thing that's run. Let's check out Python, and sure enough, it's something else. It's important to note that although these look different, they all express the same idea. The differences will appear as you need to tell your function about parameters or what functions return. And moving between languages like Java and C++ may be easier than Python because of these differences. The takeaway is first to know what you want to express and then find the analog for it in another language. Chances are the equivalent you want is closely related. Even variable types, which can vary between languages, usually have similarities that you can match. Some languages, like C#, have a catch-all var type, which doesn't exist in, say, Java, and will require more study. But your most basic and most used ints, strings, and so on will certainly have analogs that you can use when learning a new language. The next big topic is one that can never be left out: syntax. This also varies a ton and will likely trip you up when moving between one language to another. Let's look at Python again. Notice right here, we have an indent on these lines. People will often format their code for readability, but in Python it's essential. That's because Python will complain if everything isn't formatted absolutely perfectly. Some other languages, like Java, don't even care about formatting, and they can be written on a single line if you want. These languages still need some structure, and they usually use semicolons for this. In these languages, they wield pretty great power, and adding or dropping some semicolons, or indents depending on the language, will usually break your code. Then there's special syntax, which may set some languages apart, like this C# link query. It helps replace SQL commands by offering a different approach than do other languages. These syntax may save time or improve code readability if you know how to use them properly. Usually though, it's growing pains as you get used to this new language, so it's handy to keep some kind of reference guide around as you're still getting used to all of it. Organizational differences between different languages can also pose a big challenge. This is usually where best practices are taken into account to help others read your code. A lot of beginners will skip over this, but investing the time in now to learn best practices for each language will help you in the long run. If you skip over it, understanding others' codes in the future might be a bigger challenge than it already needs to be. Instead of showing you an example across many languages, I will show you multiple concepts just to give you an idea of how broad the topic really is. This C++ excerpt shows you how to make new classes, complete with accessors, types of data, and types of functions available to the class. It also has syntactical components with the braces and semicolon over there. Next up, inheritance. Now this, along with most concepts touched upon in this video, needs its own video to do it justice. It refers to the widely used concept of certain kinds of objects deriving from other objects and uses this to manage data and work with these objects in code. Again, it needs a whole nother video, but this explanation is just to give you an idea. It's also important to store your source files well. In this Python case, each folder has its own init and set of source files that can be used as part of the sound module here. There are a bunch more concepts involved in organization, and a good programmer should take the time to learn the quirks of whatever new language they want to study. Remember how I said there are more advanced topics? Well, there are loads of these, and once you master the basics, these can really help take your programming to the next level. To name just a few, you have language-specific features, like that C# link query from earlier. There's also optimization. This not only refers to having good algorithms, but also making sure your code is concise and not bloated. Coding style helps add consistency, and the list goes on. Whenever you think you've covered it all, you'll find that there's always more to learn and more to improve on. Don't be discouraged if this seems overwhelming. It takes people a long time before they're able to get a grasp of this. So, with that said, you can use these tricks to go from any language that you know to any language that you want to learn. Keep in mind that this is not comprehensive, and there's tons of tricks, skills, and areas you need to study later to get a real firm grip of the language. It may take months or even years to become proficient, so just give it time and work hard to improve, and you'll be able to master any language. Some of the best resources can be online forums, and I'm sure I don't need to tell you how some, like Stack Overflow, are invaluable resources that most of us just can't do without. All this is great, but what if you don't know any languages and are learning your first one? Well, you've come to the right place. I created this channel to help people learn programming, whether it's their first or fifth language. It'll start with the basics, but I'll also cover what it's like in the industry, higher level concepts, and more. The world of computer science is massive, from web development to mobile apps to low-level driver creation. Getting started can seem like a big challenge, and it is a huge time commitment and undertaking. But with effort and hard work, you too can successfully learn any language. If this is something you'd like to see, please leave a comment to let me know and like this video. Thanks, and see you in the next one.